Today's story takes place in Banyuwangi, East Java, on the eastern tip of Java Island, a region of rice fields and fishing villages, better known for its fertile soil, Javanese traditions, and mysticism. Here, sorcery was a part of everyday life. For generations, people in rural Java turned to the dukun, part spiritual guide, part sorcerer, part healer. Villagers sought them for blessings on a new rice crop, cures for mysterious illnesses, or protection from curses. But dukuns were also feared. When things go wrong, they are usually the first to be blamed. If your crop suddenly died or if your child fell sick without explanation, suspicion would quickly turn to black magic. Now in Banyuwangi, this fear was especially strong. The regency had long been regarded as the center of santet, the Javanese term for sorcery. In fact, its slogan is literally Banyuwangi, the city of santet. But in 1998, those fears erupted into a wave of killings that left more than 300 people dead in less than a year. And in the midst of that bloodshed, villagers began whispering of mysterious figures, masked ninjas dressed in black, who were hunting sorcerers and seemed to appear and vanish at will. Were they human, supernatural, or something else entirely? Who is really behind the killings of hundreds of dukuns in East Java? Is this a cover-up from a much bigger, more powerful organization? Today on Side Notes, we uncover a story involving mysteriously dying cows, mass hysteria, and ninjas who killed and turned people against each other. The following episode contains mentions of death and descriptions of violent events, including bodily harm. Viewer discretion is advised. This retelling is based on publicly available information, including court records, news reports, and historical accounts. If you appreciate the story, do like and subscribe and let us know in the comments. Now, I know there are many things that are happening in this story, but most reports would indicate that this all began with one person, Soemarno Adi. Soemarno Adi was a 35-year-old dukun from the village of Kaligondo, Banyuwangi. Locals knew him as the Black Beetle, a dukun whose reputation was built on both fear and fascination. So imagine living in an area where black magic is a part of daily life. Yes, you pray to God for sustenance and protection, but you also believe that there are people like Soemarno Adi in your village who have supernatural powers and who can heal or curse you and others in your village. And the story goes, once Adi had shown off his supernatural powers at a night market by casting a spell to cut off the electricity and setting the entire fair into darkness. So when cows began dying mysteriously in early 1998 in Adi's village, suspicion immediately fell on him, and people started blaming him for the loss of livestock. Villagers demanded that he renounce black magic, but Adi refused, and he even sought to upgrade his powers. Fearing that Adi would cause more trouble in the village if he continued to practice black magic, villagers decided to take matters into their own hands. On February 4, 1998, a mob armed with sticks, swords, and sharpened bamboo stormed his home. Soemarno Adi was beaten, stabbed, and stoned to death. His murder set off months of vigilante violence against other suspected sorcerers or dukuns, turning on neighbors, and these accused are dragged from their homes, tortured, and killed. Adi's killing would be the first of 309 dukun lynchings reported across East Java in 1998 and the year after, all in the name of purging villages of evil. After Adi's killing, something terrifying took root in Banyuwangi. It was almost as if a wave of paranoia had struck the villagers, and they began to form vigilante groups armed with machetes, bamboo sticks, and anything they could find. Their mission was to hunt and kill suspected sorcerers. Suddenly, anyone accused of practicing black magic was marked for death, and you could literally accuse anyone just by starting a rumor. Ordinary people were hunted and killed. Farmers, neighborhood chiefs, even clerics affiliated with the Nahdlatul Ulama or NU, Indonesia's largest Muslim organization. Now, night after night, reports of killing spread. People were dragged from their homes, beaten, tortured, and murdered, sometimes in front of their own families. It was as if the entire region had been swept into a storm of hysteria. And then the stories of the ninjas began. Villagers spoke of mysterious figures dressed in black, moving silently in the night, and they were described as highly skilled, almost supernatural assassins targeting suspected sorcerers with precision. Some said they were strangers sent from outside of Banyuwangi. Others claimed they were government operatives taking advantage of this chaos that's unfolding. One attempted attack happened at 8:30 p.m. on October 3rd, 1998, where 4 ninjas entered the prayer room of the Tabiatul Islam As-Safia boarding school in Banyuwangi. Their target was the principal and cleric, Ali Sudaji. Ahmad Sujiono, who was a student then, shared that the ninjas ambushed our cleric's house from 2 sides, the front and the back. But the cleric escaped death as he had left the prayer room earlier than usual because he felt sleepy and hungry. If he had stayed in that room any longer, he would have been attacked and killed by these so-called ninjas. Unfortunately, not everyone was as lucky as Ali Sudaji. One such victim was Pak Tafsir. On the night of September 1st, 1998, the elderly couple, comprising Pak Tafsir and his wife, Bu Miswa, had just finished dinner in their small bamboo home when they heard a voice outside the house asking, "Grandfather, can I borrow a match?" It was pitch black outside, there was no electricity for their house, and they were in the middle of like a rice paddy. So, suspicious and frightened, Pak Tafsir armed himself with a heavy club. When he opened the door, he was ambushed by a mob, some wearing ninja-style masks. He hit one attacker, but he was quickly overpowered. And the mob tied a rope around his neck, dragged him 50 meters across the roadside, and they left his lifeless body to be found the next morning. To date, nobody knows who these people were, and no one has been caught or sent to jail. There were even whispers that these ninjas were not human at all, but spirits or demons sent to cleanse the land. Eyewitnesses described them as leaping over walls, vanishing into the dark, or attacking victims without a sound. The hysteria fed on itself. The more people believed in the ninjas, the more they saw them. And every shadow became a threat. Every noise at night was like a possible attack. And in that atmosphere, reason had no chance. The killings escalated. In total, between February 1998 and December 1999, 194 people were killed in Banyuwangi, 108 in Jember, and 7 in Malang. So how could these senseless killings continue for so long without anyone stopping them? Many Indonesians actually noticed something strange. Some of these killings didn't look like random village justice. They seemed too organized, too coordinated. So there were 3 theories that came up about what was really happening in East Java. And they're all actually about power, not black magic. The first theory was that this was all ordered by President Suharto himself. Yeah, that dictator who had ruled Indonesia for 32 years was losing his grip on power in 1998. The Asian financial crisis had crashed the economy, people couldn't afford food, and massive riots were breaking out across the country. With over 1,200 people killed in these riots and his presidency crumbling, Suharto needed a distraction, and what better way than creating panic about evil sorcerers in rural villages? Keep people scared of their neighbours, and maybe they won't notice the government falling apart. On May 21st, Suharto finally resigned, handing power to President B.J. Habibie. But the killings didn't stop. In fact, they actually got worse. This leads to the second theory, that these attacks specifically targeted members of Indonesia's largest Muslim organization, Nahdlatul Ulama or NU. So this group was forming a new political party in East Java, and many of the so-called sorcerers killed were actually connected to them. It looks like someone wanted to weaken this organization before they could gain political power in the new democracy. The third theory is the most disturbing. Witnesses describe attackers who didn't seem like ordinary villagers. They moved like soldiers, they were using walkie-talkies and had lists of who to target. Many believe that these were secret police or military members trying to create so much chaos that people would give up on democracy altogether, maybe even prefer dictatorship over all of this madness. The message was clear. See how dangerous freedom is? Maybe things are safer under the old dictator. Whatever the real story, something doesn't add up about these ninja killings. The attackers spoke with different accents and arrived in cars instead of foot and operated with military precision. Finally, after years of investigation, The National Commission on Human Rights concluded in 2018 that the murders were conducted by trained and organized assailants and that national security forces enabled the killings by not intervening until September 1998, months after all of this began. To this day, no one has been arrested or punished for the deaths of 309 people. And the families of victims are still waiting for justice that may never come. So you might think what happened in East Java was unique, a bizarre event that could only happen in a specific period of time. But stories sparked by mass hysteria and false accusations have been going on for centuries. The most famous example happened in Salem, Massachusetts in 1692. In this tiny Puritan town, two young girls, Betty Paris and Abigail Williams, started behaving strangely. They had fits and they made animal noises, and they claimed that they were being tortured by invisible forces. Soon, they pointed fingers at three women they said were witches: Tituba, a Caribbean slave, Sarah Good, a homeless woman, and Sarah Osborne, an elderly lady who skipped church too often. What happened next in Salem was like watching a virus spread. Accusations multiplied, confessions were forced, and more people were named as witches. By the end, 19 people were hanged, and one man, Giles Corey, was slowly crushed to death with stones because he refused to plead guilty or innocent. The big difference between Salem and East Java is that Salem at least attempted to have a legal process with trials and evidence. The East Java killings had mass ninjas and mob violence, but the end result was the same. Innocent people killed because of fear and suspicion. So why do normal people join witch hunts? It comes down to three simple things. First, when we're scared, we can't control what's happening, we look for someone to blame. In 1692, it was crop failures and disease. In 1998, Indonesia, it was dying livestock and economic collapse. Second, humans are social creatures. If everyone around you believes in witches or sorcerers, you probably will too, especially if questioning these beliefs makes you look suspicious. Third, once a witch hunt starts, it's really hard to stop, and it creates its own momentum. Accuse or be accused. In East Java, neighbors who had lived peacefully for decades suddenly saw each other as threats. And Salem has 300 years to process what has happened. They've turned their tragedy into museums and tourist attractions, lessons about human behavior gone wrong. Banyuwangi is still raw, with families of victims still waiting for someone, anyone, to acknowledge what happened to their loved ones. And what both tragedies show us is how easily fear can turn neighbors into monsters. Whether it's Puritan hats or ninja masks, the underlying story is the same. When you're scared enough, you believe almost anything, and you will do terrible things in the name of your own safety. What happens when a country just pretends something terrible never happened? In Banyuwangi today, you won't hear much about the witch hunts or sorcerer hunts of 1998. Some survivors have moved away from the village. Others still live in the same villages, sometimes right next door to the people that they suspect took part in the killings. The pain just passes silently from parent to children, always there but never really discussed. After 24 years of silence, Indonesia finally took a step forward. In 2022, they passed a new law making it illegal to proclaim yourself as a practitioner of black magic or declare that you have supernatural powers. But this doesn't really address the issue of protecting individuals from being falsely accused of sorcery, nor does it prevent them from facing potential attacks or violence as a result of these accusations. For the families of 309 people killed, a new law doesn't bring back their loved ones or answer the question, who was really behind it all? Still, there are people working to make sure these stories aren't forgotten. Brave journalists and human rights organizations like Contrast continue to document what happened, preserving survivors' accounts before they're lost to time. The most important lesson here is witch hunts are never really about witches. In Salem, it wasn't about women casting spells. In Banyuwangi, it wasn't about dukuns cursing cattle. It's power. It's about who can use fear as a weapon. It's about turning neighbors against each other to achieve political goals. So the next time you hear people being demonized, whether they're called sorcerers, enemies, or threats to society, ask yourself two simple questions. Who benefits from making you afraid? And what bigger truth is this fear trying to hide? The ninjas of East Java may have disappeared back into the shadows, but the lessons they left behind shine a light on how easily our communities can be manipulated when we're afraid. Thanks for watching. This was Side Notes. I'll see you in the next one.